Welcome to Over a Cup of Tea. Joining us today from Massachusetts, United States, is Amanda Hamish Steinberg. Dr. Steinberg is the Visual Resource Librarian of Islamic Arts and Architecture at the Harvard Fine Arts Library. At the library, her responsibilities are acquiring, describing, and maintaining the library's extensive PowerPoint collection of slides and digital images. Dr. Steinberg is also a scholar of medieval Arabic literature. She earned her PhD from the University of Pennsylvania, and her dissertation was entitled Wives, Witches, and Warriors, Women in the Popular Arabic Epics. Hello, Amanda. Thank you for joining us. Thank you so much, Amanda, for taking out time. It's so lovely to see you.
Of course. I'm so grateful that you wanted to talk to me about my job. That's so nice.
Yeah, lovely to find out about. And I'm so impressed that your research is on medieval literature in the Arabian world, and I just think that not many people would know much about it. So
it's true. It was very interesting but difficult research to do because there hadn't been much done on it before. So that's what made it interesting, but also it was challenging because I didn't feel like I had much to build on. I felt like I was sort of starting from scratch, But
and what is the reason? I mean, was it not enough resources, or there wasn't much literature to begin with?
So there wasn't much research that had been done. I feel like because it's storytelling. I think a lot of times people feel like maybe storytelling isn't worthy of serious scholarship. I mean, the stories are they can be kind of silly. They're definitely very imaginative. They're not very serious. So I think sometimes people feel like they should study more serious literature. But these stories had some really unique aspects to them that I hadn't seen in any of the other literature I had read from the period. So I thought it was definitely worth studying. And I'm hoping it seems like more people are starting to study the Siyar Shadbiyya now, and I hope that the field is growing because it's a really interesting thing, and it's really lucky that we actually have written texts about them because they were oral storytelling for the most part. So the fact that we have these manuscripts and these transcripts is really a gift that I think should use for research.
That's absolutely.
Thank you for having me.
It's lovely. How's the weather in Massachusetts today?
Oh, it's so hot. It's been so hot this week.
I know it's been raining here this week.
We could use some rain. I'm hoping we'll get some later today.
That's true. Amanda, tell us about your very interesting topic of dissertation that you chose, Wives, Witches, and Warriors, Women in Arabic Popular Epics. What were these women doing in medieval Arabia?
So you've come right to the most difficult question. This is the question I might never be able to answer about my research, which is why and how were these women in these popular narratives. So the form of literature I looked at for my dissertation was called the Siyar Sha'biyya, so the popular biography if you translate it literally, but it's usually translated as popular epic or even popular romance. Because it sort of has aspects of all of those genres that we may be more familiar with. So as the name biography implies, it usually follows one hero for his or her life and the adventures that they have and the people that they meet and the supernatural things that happen to them. So some of these figures were historical figures, like Antara ibn Shaddad, the famous warrior poet from the 6th century. or there's one about the 13th century Sultan Baybars, the Mamluk Sultan. And other heroes seem to be fully fictional, that we can't find any historical equivalent. But these tales aren't really bound by reality at all. Sometimes they borrow from history, but they're definitely imaginative works, and seem to have been intended for pure entertainment. So we're not really quite sure when they started to be composed or performed, because they're oral narratives originally. But we know they really exploded in popularity around the Mongol invasions in the 13th century. They were very popular then, and that was when a lot of them started to be written down. So the earliest versions we have of these narratives come from generally that period, although we suspect that they were much earlier. So that's just kind of a quick introduction to the genre.
Why is that? Why were they written just after the Mongol invasions or the disruption of society?
Yeah, I think you've hit it on the head there. I think a lot of times, especially when we're talking about popular heritage, sort of this mass disruption, invasion it makes people start worrying about their cultural heritage, right? They want to preserve the things that they feel are uniquely theirs. So it may have been around that time that the storytellers or others started worrying that if these things weren't written down, maybe they wouldn't last. Maybe they wouldn't survive these invasions. And this tends to happen in a cyclical way, that the more popular heritage, the more folkloric aspects of society tends to be more valued at times of cultural upheaval or invasion. So that was what was happening there, I think. And the subject matter of invasion and frontiers definitely shows up in these narratives as well, which makes it kind of interesting. You'll have things about, Antara ibn Shaddad, who was pre-Islamic. He was a pre-Islamic Arab warrior, but he has aspects about him that are definitely Islamic. He's sort of depicted, because he is a hero, he's depicted as sort of a Muslim before there were Muslims. He exhibits many aspects that you might consider Muslim, even though he couldn't have been yet, because he was, he died prior to Muhammad. But anyway, sorry, I'm getting kind of off track. You asked about the women. So, the women were what I found most interesting when I first encountered these narratives. I had been studying Arabic literature for a while, and I had been reading some of what sort of they call classical literature, the very intricate poetry, and even sort of the more trickster narratives, the maqamat, and women didn't play a very large part in those, except as love interests or objects of desire. But the first time I read one of the siras, I was blown away. There were women on every page in all these different roles, warriors and leaders and sorceresses, and they were everywhere in a way that I hadn't seen anywhere else. So that question of why was so fascinating to me. And it's frustrating that when we're studying such a distant period, we can never really come to the true answer, right? We can sort of make guesses, but we can't really know why the storytellers so uniformly decided to feature women very heavily in this literature as opposed to other forms of literature. Mm-hmm. I want to believe that maybe there were women in the audience because this was sort of a public thing. Maybe there were women they were trying to appeal to that were listening in the markets or otherwise, but we really have no evidence of this. And some of these were still, the storytellers were still reciting these in more modern periods. And in those cases, the audience was almost 100% men. So it's probably unlikely that there were women in the audience, though I still think that would be very interesting if it were true. So it's probably more likely that these powerful women, especially like the warriors, represented male fears or fantasies, that the storytellers wanted to appeal to in this exciting way, sort of like the Amazon myths that were sort of popular across the world in pre-modern periods. But it is a question that I would love to go back and be a fly on the wall on some of these performances and see what was actually going on. But it's probably a question I will never be able to satisfactorily answer.
It's very interesting. So how did you get interested in the Islamic world or the Arab world?
Both sets of my father's grandparents were from Lebanon. And my grandparents were dedicated assimilationists. They wanted to be American, and even though they knew some Arabic, they didn't teach their children Arabic. My father doesn't know any Arabic, and his siblings don't either, except for food words, as my father says. So I started studying the language. I started studying Arabic at university as sort of a way to reconnect with my heritage. And once I could read Arabic, I was a writer. I loved literature in any language. So combining my new language that I was studying with literature seemed like a natural next step for me. When I went to grad school, I decided to go to a Middle East Studies program, or Near Eastern Languages and Civilizations, it was called, to sort of get a broader view of the civilization as a whole. And so everything's sort of fallen from that.
That's so interesting. Amanda, tell us about the Harvard Fine Arts Library and what is your job at this special institution?
Yeah, of course. So the Harvard Fine Arts Library, it started in the late 19th century, and it was the dedicated library of the Fogg Art Museum at Harvard. So it's got some, really, really old, it's been around for a long time. It's got some really old and really wonderful materials in it. When it became an official Harvard Library of its own sometime in the 1960s, it was already one of the largest collections for art research in the United States. It's also home to the Aga Khan program for Islamic Art and Architecture. And that's a program that's spread between Harvard and MIT. And we sort of divide responsibilities for collecting amongst our libraries. The Fine Arts Library, which I'm a part of, generally focuses on the historic arts and the visual arts. The Harvard Graduate School of Design collects materials on contemporary art. And MIT has a fantastic architecture collection. And obviously these all overlap, but we try to divide responsibility to have like an amazing research collection in, the Boston area for anyone who wants to come study it. So my position, which is Visual Resources Librarian for Islamic Art and Architecture, it's part of this Aga Khan program within the Fine Arts Library. So I'm responsible for our digital and otherwise image collection, which is very, very large. Even though some of it is only available to Harvard students, a lot of it is also open access, and I'm always willing to help researchers from anywhere if they find images in our collection that might be helpful to them.
Okay. And I wanted to ask that all these digital images and the slides are available to the students or to general public? Anyone can comment?
So we have two. Yeah, we have two divisions of our collection. One is the study collection, and this one is only open generally to Harvard students because a lot of these images are scanned from books. So there could be copyright issues if we opened them, to the general public, because they're not supposed to be used for publication or any sort of use besides non-commercial educational use. And that's a large part of the collection. But our special collections are generally open to anyone. and we try to allow people to use our collections as much as humanly possible. And if you have a use for one of our images and you're not sure whether or not you'd be able to have access to it, and I'm always available to field requests and let you know about the copyright issues that may or may not be involved.
So these are just digital images. These are not actual books that you have.
Right. So the Fine Arts Library has a ton of books. And my colleague Andras Riedelmeier, who's the bibliographer for Islamic Art and Architecture, so his responsibility is the books. And we take some of these digital images from our books so that people can use them for, virtual research. So it's been in large demand in the past few months since everyone has to do virtual research now.
Of course, absolutely. So, Amanda, you will show us two of the images from some of the most, two of the most very celebrated books that were produced in the world. One is the Shahnameh, and the other is Divan of Hafez. So could you please tell our audience a little bit about these two books before we go to the images?
Sure. I'll just give a brief. I'm assuming most people know at least a little bit about these, but I'll just give a quick overview. So the Shahnameh is a long Persian epic poem that was written around the turn of the 11th century, around the year 10,000, by the poet Ferdowsi. So it's the national epic of Iran, and the subject matter is kings and heroes who predate Islam coming to Persia. Rather similarly to the epics I study, the Arabic epics I study, they sort of deal with the forebears and their stories. This epic has been popular over so much time and space, and it was so important that it was often illustrated. And that's sort of, in Islamic art, that's one of the most interesting things about it, is it's one of the most illustrated books that we have. So we have countless illustrations from various versions that we can compare, and you can really trace the development of book painting through this one work. And the Divan of Hafez, it's got to be the most famous Persian poems in the world. Every Iranian I know has at least a few copies in their home. This book was maybe not as often illustrated as the Shahnameh, but has some very beautiful illustrated copies. And the images I wanted to show are part of our Stuart Cary Welch Islamic and South Asian photograph collection. And this was from the slides of Stuart Cary Welch, who was a known curator. And he had wonderful connections with a lot of art collectors and buyers, and was able to get access to very rare manuscripts and take photographs of them. And a lot of them were before some of these manuscripts were split up to make more money off of their sale, and he was able to see some of them before they were split up. So these images are open access to everyone, and I'm hoping that these two folios I'm going to show you show some of the strengths of the collection.
That's lovely. We are very fortunate to be able to see them sitting at home.
Okay, so let me show you first. I'm going to show the Court of Gayumars or Kayumars. So this is a very famous folio from the Shah Tahmasp or Houghton Shahnameh, which was broken up for sale very famously, even though it's a beautiful work. And it's hard to be able to see all the folios together. Now this folio is owned by the Aga Khan Museum in Toronto. And they have very generously put up an image of it on their website, as you can see here, hopefully. Can you see it?
Yes, I can see the image. Can you
Okay.
enlarge the image?
Yes, so this is what I want to show you. So the image is a beautiful image. However, it's rather small. And when you enlarge it, it starts to get blurry. Oops, what did I do? This is as far as you can enlarge it. You can't go any bigger. And it starts to get a little blurry. So this is a beautifully detailed work of art.
Absolutely.
Sorry?
Absolutely gorgeous. I've never
Yeah. But some of the details get lost. If you look, say, in this upper corner here, you can see there are people hiding behind the rocks. But it's rather difficult to see if there are expressions on their faces or anything. So the next thing I want to show you is an image from our Welch collection, which Stuart Cary Welch took of this actual folio, very close up with a very high quality camera. And you
could you please hold on for
here.
a second? There is an issue here. Could you please hold on for a second? Yes.
Sure. Okay. So I was about to show, let me share my screen again. I was about to show one of our images of this same folio, which Stuart Cary Welch took on his very good camera from the actual folio. So you can see here every expression on the face, every fold in the gown, every leopard spot on their clothes. Guy of Mars was the first king of Persia, and the people were dressing in leopard skins. You can just see every little detail, even some of the damage in this upper right side here. It's really a treasure that we have some of these really high quality details that you wouldn't necessarily be able to find even from the museums that hold these folios themselves. And again, these are all of the Stuart Cary Welch images. So this is one such item. Oops. And this is from the Divan of Hafez. And it is depicting a folio depicting the celebration of Eid. Let me share it real quick. Okay. So this is our page on our image repository, Hollis Images. So you can see that it's the celebration of Eid from a private collection. And look at all these small details. Let me show you a picture. Can you, oh, of course now it's not letting me sign in. Can you see the large folio now? Or is it still sharing the old page?
Yes, it is, yes.
Okay, so this is the full folio.
Rooftop.
Sorry?
Are they citing the moon, the Eid moon? They are on the rooftop?
Yeah, they're citing the Eid moon. There are some on the rooftop and the rulers down on the bottom here. And we have lots of beautiful details of this image as well. So this is the full folio, but oh, sorry, I just stopped sharing. But let me see, there's a wonderful picture here that I'll share with you of just the group on the rooftop. My internet is acting funny, of course. There it is. So again, very wonderful close-up of these people. You can see their thumb rings, you can see the feathers in their turbans, and again, this is not, if you look up this folio on Google, all you will find is that myself and my cataloger have posted some of these images on Twitter before. These aren't available anywhere else because they're in a private collection. So this is another of the strength of the collection. And again, we were making these all open access for anyone to use. So it's really exciting. And So beautiful, right? I love this. I
Absolutely.
love this work.
And just the fact that you're able to have these for the public, for the students, because things in private collections are then just lost to people and scholars and, audiences
Exactly. They're
outside
very
the
hard to
private
access.
circles.
Yeah, they're very, very hard to access, even for very well-connected researchers and students or people who aren't able to travel to these collections. I mean, we're really excited to be able to offer these to anyone who needs them.
This is an amazing resource to have. Does the Harvard Library have a very large digital collection accessible on the internet? Can people access the digital collection that they have?
Yes. So we have a few ways that you can access it. We have a site called Hollis Images where we keep all of our digital images. That contains both the study collection and the special collections. So you may encounter things on there that you can't access unless you're a Harvard affiliate. But we also have a new search platform called the Digital Collections Platform. And if you just search for Digital Collections Platform at Harvard, it'll take you there. And this platform only contains our very large collection of open access materials. So you won't come across anything there that you can't access unless you're a Harvard affiliate. So everything in the Stuart Cary Welch collection is in the Digital Collections Platform. So it's sometimes I direct people there and tool, and there's a lot of things on there.
Oh, that's very interesting. Amanda, tell us something about your upcoming projects or some interesting projects that you're doing at the library these days.
Sure. So something that should be coming out really soon is that we are making a coloring book with some of the Stuart Cary Welch images. I sort of floated the idea on Twitter, and a lot of people were very excited about it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so it's turning out to be a little more complicated than we thought, but we're working on it, and we're hoping to get it out within the next few weeks.
That would be lovely.
And it's just an example of, it's an example of what you can do when you're able to make the images open access, when you're able to open these things up and let people interact with them in a different way than they might think about for fine art. And really take ownership of these images, and again, sharing them openly across the whole world. I'm hoping people can sort of reconnect with some of these paintings in a way that they may not have otherwise. And I'm really excited about it. I think it's going to be really fun.
Yeah, that's going to be absolutely fantastic, because not just that these images will become household, articles for people, but also like a lot of people like you would be reconnecting with their heritage in this way. Because, in this globalized world, a lot of people live outside their own cultures.
Right. And even, the coloring book, I'm hoping children will be able to get use out of it. We kept it mostly innocent images, although they aren't all innocent. But we're hoping children will be able to sort of connect with these paintings in a way that they might not have been able to otherwise.
Yes. So is this a thing that you thought of during COVID, when people are homebound and more on the internet?
I was just sort of thinking about how we could use these images in a different way. And the Countway Library at Harvard, which is the medical school, has done a coloring book of some of their images before. So we sort of took theirs as inspiration. Their images were a little different because they were largely from old printed books. So it was a little easier sometimes to get colorable images. We had to, take the color out, make them black and white, make them a little bolder. So it took a lot of fiddling in Photoshop, but I'm thinking that I think it looks really great, and I can't wait to show it to everyone.
Absolutely. We look forward to this project, and we look forward to participating in coloring the images.
I hope I hope people will post their results on social media or otherwise. I'd love to see.
That would be lovely. Yes. Thank you so much for taking out time. This is lovely, and this is a lovely resource to have. Thank you.
Thank you.